So not that long ago, I made a video where I went over my top 5 Zelda games. In that video, I overlooked one game that a lot of people consider to easily be in the top 5, Wind Waker. So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to give it another chance. I liked it when I first played it, but I slowly started to sour on it over time. So I'm going to play through the game once again to see if I was fair to it or not. So with that, let's get started. First things first, you should understand that this game came right after what is easily the darkest game in the entire series, Majora's Mask. The devs were likely so sick of all the dark themes and probably also traumatized from that game's 8-month development cycle that they then decided to make the most lighthearted game in the entire series. At first, people weren't really a huge fan of it since they really wanted this, a realistic at the time, duel between Link and Ganondorf, and were surprised to see that they were instead getting this. Of course, people eventually grew on Wind Waker, and now it's regarded as one of the best in the entire series, but at the time, people really did not like the tonal shift, and thought the game was too childish, and it was for babies because it had our cartoony graphic style. This is because it was the early 2000s, and realistic graphics were all the rage, so this game was overlooked for a long time by even the most die-hard Zelda fans. Well, we might as well dive deeper into the aesthetics now while we're talking about graphic style. Like I said before, one of the things Wind Waker is praised for the most nowadays is the graphics. Even though I didn't really care that much for the game, the one thing I never criticized was the art style. This game is absolutely gorgeous, it just looks so bright and cheerful, and with its simplified nature, it's timeless. This game came out in 2003 and it still looks so good to this day, which you really can't say for some of the other Zelda games out there. Look, I adore Twilight Princess, but its graphics didn't age nearly as well. Not really the fault of the game itself, just more that realistic graphics age, and they age really fast. Now, yeah, you're looking at the HD release, but even if you upscale the original game on Dolphin, it still looks great. While we're at it, I may as well talk about what I think of the HD version in comparison to the original. I think it's a solid upgrade, the colors just pop a whole lot more, but with that said, I would have liked it if they toned down the bloom just a tad. Sometimes it's a bit like a flashbang and it makes this weird haze that didn't exist before, making the original look cleaner when in HD. Through emulation, of course. You know what? I'm actually curious. Which version do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. The game's soundtrack and sound design is also a lot better than I remember it being. The vast majority of the music are bangers and fit right in with the goofy cartoony aesthetics. Most of the tracks are bouncy and lighthearted, even the battle themes are like this. Take a listen. I especially like the little sound cues with the battle music, where there's a jump in the track every time you land a hit, which helps make combat feel much more satisfying. There's also good softer sounding tracks as well, like Grandma's theme. The HD version also went a bit above and beyond and gave the already amazing soundtrack of this game new life by remaking it with higher quality samples. Here's the original Outset Island. And here's the HD version. It makes me wonder, why didn't they do this a few years later with the release of Twilight Princess HD? Those tracks deserve some much needed updating. Of course, the HD version adds a bunch of quality of life improvements as well. Let's take a little look at the two games. So for starters, they introduced the quick sail, which makes sailing a whole lot more bearable. It's also completely optional, so if you don't want it, you don't have to get it, which is great. You get it through the auction minigame, so you'll miss it if you don't engage in side content. Honestly, a great way to incentivize you into doing side quests. The game also cuts down the dreaded Triforce quest. In the original, this is a nightmare as you have to get 8 Triforce charts deciphered, costing 398 rupees each. It's so incredibly tedious, but the HD version makes it a whole lot better by making it so you only need to decipher 3 charts and the rest can be collected without needing a chart. There's also a bunch of minor changes, like how when you play a song for a second time, it skips the encore, which helps a lot when you have to change the wind direction a lot, or when using the command melody. There's also a new bonus item, the Hero's Charm. In the original game, when you complete the Savage Labyrinth, you get a measly piece of heart, but in the HD version, you get this new item which allows you to see enemy health, which is neat. I really do appreciate optional upgrades like the Swift Sail and the Hero's Charm. My favorite addition to the game though is the new mode, Hero Mode. This is a hard mode that honestly the game desperately needed. Normal mode is just too easy. You take so little damage and any damage you do take will quickly get undone because the game just showers you with hearts. Now, Hero Mode isn't like Dark Souls difficulty or anything. I didn't die. Well, actually, that's a lie. I did die once. But, well, it's less because the game was unforgiving and more, this. But it's a nice change of pace, and I actually had some moments in the game where things were very tense. It changed the way I play. I actually used items to stun enemies and carried potions and fairies on me. Grandma's the goat, by the way. Her soup is just absolutely broken. Okay, I think I talked enough about these two versions and the history of the game and whatnot, so let's just get into the story. I guess I should say spoilers ahead. I mean, it's obvious, and also this game is 20 years old. That grace period ship has long since sailed. But anyways, our tale begins with Link sleeping, a common theme among Zelda games. We are on Outset Island and it's Link's birthday, and he's now of age to wear a green tunic for a day, since it's tradition to give children a green tunic to wear when they become the same age as the Hero of Time. Oh yeah, I should mention, this is the sequel to Ocarina of Time, not Majora's Mask, because of all the timeline shenanigans. This is the adult timeline, aka the timeline Link from Ocarina of Time left behind when Zelda sent him back to give him a childhood. In this timeline, the Hero of Time was a legend, and the story of him defeating Ganon was known throughout the land. So when Ganon returned after the seal on him broke, the people prayed in hopes of the Hero of Time's return, but he never did. This left the gods with one option, to flood the entirety of Hyrule and telling people to take refuge on the mountaintops. Okay, that's everything you really need to know that happens before the game, so now back to Link over here. Of course, before visiting his grandma, he has to, you know, crawl under her house and steal her life savings. Then afterwards he sees her, she gives him the tunic, blah blah blah, tradition, and then he goes to find his sister and sees a giant bird carrying a girl in its talons, chased by a pirate ship. The bird gets hit by a rock and drops the girl in the forest on the peak of the mountain. Link then goes off to save that girl, and then afterwards is not thanked at all, or even really gets acknowledged. The girl he saved is named Tetra. She's very important. Things get even worse though, because shortly after, the bird comes for round 2 and takes Aero, Link's sister, instead. Link, understandably not very happy about that, takes off with the pirates and sneaks into the fortress that his sister is being held in. The pirates didn't do a very good job of getting him into the fortress though, so he lost his sword, leaving him defenseless, and he's forced to sneak through it. When Link finally finds his sister again, he is thwarted by the bird picking him up and then at the command of a mysterious man, thrown into the ocean to drown. Link wakes up and now there's a talking boat. Okay. This is the King of Red Lions, and he is Link's companion for this game. Link then breaks a possible serial killer out of jail so he can get a sail, so he can start to gather 3 pearls. One is from Dragon Roost Island, the home of the Rito. They have a problem with a rather angry Valoo, and it's Link's problem now because they aren't handing over Din's pearl until Link calms Valoo. So he does that by taking out the creature grabbing Valoo's tail from below, and then moves on to his next destination, the Forest Haven. There, the Deku Tree seems to be a little sick, so Link takes out all the Choo-Choos covering the Deku Tree's face, and then meets the Koroks. They are about to start a ceremony, but someone is missing. Another Korok, who I forgot the name of, says that Makar has fallen into the Forbidden Woods. This is not good, so of course it's Link's job to get Makar out of there. The Deku Tree then gives Link a leaf and sends him on his way. Once Link rescues Makar from that plant thingy, they both return safely and the ceremony is a success, and Link is given Farore's Pearl. Great! Now Link only needs one more, so he heads on over to Greatfish Isle to retrieve the third pearl from Jaboon. But, one problem? Greatfish Isle is in ruins, and the world is cursed into eternal night and rain now. So Link steals bombs from the pirates who stole the bombs from this guy, and no, we do not untie him. Then with those bombs, Link makes his way back to Outset where he finds Jaboon. Jaboon just hands Link Nehru's pearl. Great, no need to do more favors for people. Link then places all 3 pearls in the hands of specific statues, which reveal the Tower of the Gods. This is a final test for Link to see if he is worthy. Link of course makes it through, and at the top rings a bell that reveals a glowing mark in the waters below. Link then goes through this and is brought underwater to the hidden world of Hyrule, completely frozen in time. Link then pulls the Master Sword, which looks a little different from usual. Anyways, pulling the sword unfroze time, so after getting to test it out a little, he makes his way back up to the surface, where he then heads straight for the Forsaken Fortress. This time, he doesn't have to hide and sneak by like a coward. This dude just carves a path out to the top with his new sword. Link saves his sister, and the pirates bring all the kidnapped girls back to their homes. Of course, Link still has one more piece of business to take care of. He annihilates the bird that's been terrorizing the Great Sea and makes sure they can never take another girl ever again. After that, it's a final battle against Ganondorf. Never mind, the Master Sword is actually useless because Ganondorf, deleted the sages that were giving the sword power. Here, we also learn that Ganondorf is kidnapping little girls not because he's, well, you know, but instead because he's searching for Zelda. He assumes Tetra is Zelda because his Triforce piece is reacting to her, specifically her necklace, which is an heirloom that's been passed down her family through generations. In order to save Link and Tetra, the Rito send in Valu to commit a little bit of arson, and now Tetra wakes up to Link staring at her. Weird, but okay. Link takes her to the basement of Hyrule Castle and they both meet the last king of Hyrule, King Daphnis no Hansen Hyrule. It turns out he's also the king of Red Lions, meaning Link has been traveling with the king of Hyrule, which is pretty cool. It's also revealed here that Tetra is in fact Zelda, and makes her transformation when Tetra's necklace is put together with another fragment to fully form the Triforce of Wisdom. Link then locks her in a basement while he goes back up to get the descendants of the sages to replace the old ones. After that's done, he then puts the Triforce of Courage back together, fully submitting himself as the new hero. Not the hero of time, but instead the hero of winds. Also, I should mention that unlike other Links in the series, this one isn't connected to the bloodline, and he doesn't have the spirit of the hero. He's just some kid who put the Triforce of Courage back together to force the gods to recognize him as the hero. Anyways, after that, Link's all pimped out with a full arsenal, and the Master Sword is back at full power, so he heads back down to Hyrule, finds out that Zelda's been taken, and makes his way over to Ganon's tower for a final showdown. He then works together with Zelda to take Ganondorf down, finishing the fight with a 6 stab to the head. After that, Hyrule gets flooded. Link and Zelda are then returned to the surface while the king drowns with Hyrule, and the two sail off to find new land, making way for a sequel which I never played before. Let me know if you want me to try that game out, by the way. I'd be happy to give it a shot. The story here is actually pretty good. It's a more lighthearted story than its predecessors, but even so, it's still strong and knows when to be lighthearted and when to be serious. It's also got a lot of good and iconic Zelda moments, and there aren't any major plot holes or anything like that. It's also got good characters like Tetra, who has a lot of funny dialogue because she's so sassy. Though all that is kind of just removed when she's Zelda, which is a little weird, but nothing major. And of course, there's our main man Link. In my top 5 video, I mentioned that Link's expressions are very over the top here, and it sort of came out as a negative thing. I didn't exactly mean it that way. This Link fits right into the cartoony and cheerful world of Wind Waker. Of course, with a good story, you would hope that good gameplay follows as well. So let's see how it holds up. Let's start with the basic controls. Wind Waker at its core plays pretty similarly to its predecessors. There are some new additions like the ability to crouch and crawl, but this was a blessing and a curse to me because I kept playing it a lot like Ocarina or Majora and kept accidentally crawling instead of using my shield when doing light puzzles or fighting darkness enemies. You know, because you can only guard if you have your sword out or if you're targeting an enemy. I know it's kind of just a skill issue because I'm over-relying on my knowledge on other Zelda games, but I think that the crouching and crawling could have been mapped to pushing in the left stick instead of the shield button. But overall, Link moves a lot smoother in this game, like how his rolls flow so much better. It's hard to explain, but in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Link stopped first before rolling, making it feel a little sluggish. But in Wind Waker, he flows like the wind. Heh, get it? Wind Waker? Okay. There is one last point of comparison I want to make to the older games, but we'll touch on that later. For now, let's talk about something Zelda is always good at, the dungeons. The dungeons in this game are okay, they aren't really anything special for the most part. I like that I got to control Medley and Makar for the Earth and Wind Temples respectively, that was fun. Playing the command melody for the billionth time though was not so fun. Thank God for the change I mentioned earlier. I just think that there are too few dungeons, and the ones we do have are pretty simple in both theming and complexity. Like, we got a volcano, a forest, an ancient tower that serves as a trial, a spooky catacomb, and another forest, but with more of a breeze, I guess. Oh yeah, also the Forsaken Fortress sort of counts too. It's like a bite-sized dungeon. The dungeons aren't complex like I mentioned as well. Dungeons rarely stump me, and if they did, it usually felt a little cheap. Like there's this instance in Ganon's tower where I was stumped for a good 15 minutes trying to figure out what to do to get past this brick wall. I knew there was something beyond there, but no matter what I tried, it just wouldn't open. I found this other puzzle and I thought it would be the way to do it, but nope. It's just a shortcut to the overworld. You want to know what the solution was? See this hole? Yeah, jump down it. Jumping into the abyss just feels completely wrong. Like every game has reinforced that if you see nothing down there, there is nothing down there. But Wind Waker is like, nah, just do it. Don't get me wrong, these are still fun dungeons, and I'd prefer them over Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts and Tears of the Kingdom's temples any day of the week. But there's also definitely better dungeons in the series. Also, this game prides itself on the more open nature, but the dungeons have a strict order. This isn't a problem by itself, but it is when the game tricks you into thinking you do have a choice. You see, while the dungeon order is Earth Temple then Wind Temple, the game has markers on the map for both dungeons at the same time, implying you can do whichever you like first. This is a lie. No matter what, unless you beat the Earth Temple, Makar will not be there at Forest Haven. This begs the question, why? Why tease me like this? Is it really that hard to allow me to do one dungeon out of order? Ocarina allowed me to do 3 of them out of order. It's just a little thing that's so annoying. Anyways, we may as well talk about the bosses while we're here, so... The bosses are also just okay. Goma is kind of bland, but I cut the game a little slack since she's the first boss. My problem is not that she's too easy, since she is the first, but it's more that they could have done more with her fight, especially with Phase 2. In Phase 1, you're swinging on Valu's tail, which is sick, but in Phase 2, you just slap her eye with your grappling hook and then stab her till she dies. Demos is better in the sense that there's more going on than in Goma's fight. I like having the balance throwing the boomerang out and avoiding its tentacles, but there's 2 things I didn't like. 1, Phase 2, no. And secondly, when you get your chance to attack, it's hard to tell how much time you got before it recovers and swallows you. So sometimes getting hit in this fight can feel a little unfair, but nothing in this game really hurts you that much, so it's not a big deal. Godin is basically a revamped Bongo Bongo. It's the same general strat, shoot the hands and then shoot the main body, except now you have to take out his eyes and then toss him a bomb. Do this enough times and you win. Now the Helmrock King. I actually like this fight a lot. It's probably more because there's a personal connection to it. This is the bird that kidnapped your sister and other girls around the Great Sea after all, and now you finally get a chance to get your revenge and annihilate it. It also has multiple phases. In Phase 1, you're running up a wooden ramp as it destroys it behind you. In Phase 2, you use the hammer to break off its mask, and technically Phase 3, you use your sword to wail on it. It's very satisfying to finally put this bird down. Onto Jawhala. You ever play Mario 64? Yeah, it's pretty much the Bowser fight with extra steps. Shine light on him, pick him up, toss him, and then take out all the little Poes that spawn. This fight is lame, to be honest. It's easily the most forgettable fight in the roster. The last of the main dungeon bosses is Mulgera. He's very simple, just hookshot its tongue when it's exposed and wail on him with your sword. He does have an absolute banger of a theme song though, so that does make it really fun, but other than that, there's really not much to his fight. Okay, Puppet Ganon. I like how he makes really good use of the bow. His tail can be pretty hard to hit in some situations, so it's super satisfying to land a hit, especially in his last phase when he's a snake. Finally, we have Ganondorf himself. It's actually very climatic with the scenery, with water flooding Hyrule once more, and I like that you team up with Zelda, especially the final hit where Zelda shoots your mirror shield with a light arrow and it reflects off of it to hit Ganondorf. That stuff is sick. The fight is a little too short though, but still a very effective ending. Let's move on to the exploration and side content now. There is a lot of side content in this game, but most of it is in a few specific islands. Most islands don't really offer much content. They are mostly just one puzzle and then you grab a reward and be done with it. There are some cool ones like this one where you play golf with your Deku Leaf or this one with a private cabana, but for some islands they are literally nothing except for a chess. You might be asking about stuff other than exploring the main islands. There's a lot of mini games and they're pretty fun. You got a cannon shooting minigame, a slide puzzle, a mail sorting minigame, and the previously mentioned auction house. These aren't all of the minigames by the way, it's just the minigames I got around to playing in my playthrough. Also, I was going to include a whole thing here about how the battleship minigame sucks and have like a little compilation of me failing it, but I kind of, well, beat it on my first try. So, guess I'm just better than you. Other than the minigames and the islands, there's two other things you'll come across a lot. There's platforms and there's subs. Platforms are lookout towers that you climb up and then you take out a couple enemies and then get a chest for it. Usually with rupees or treasure charts, but sometimes you'll get a heart piece, which is nice. They're cool at first, but I found myself not bothering with them after a while since they're kind of a copy and paste job. Subs are also a copy and paste job. You go inside and you fight some enemies and then get a chest for it. Same sorts of rewards as well. In the open seas, you'll also encounter these glowing circles. These are spots that mark underwater treasure. If you use the grappling hook to pull up this treasure, well, you shouldn't have really bothered because 99% of the time the only thing you'll find is 50 rupees. This wouldn't be so bad if rupees were harder to come by, but the game absolutely showers you in rupees, so it feels like a slap in the face every time when you go out of your way to only get a measly 50 rupees. Now I say 99% of the time because treasure charts will also lead you to sunken treasure, but those rewards are better. They mostly net you 200 rupees each, but occasionally you'll get a better reward like a heart piece. But honestly, I don't think treasure charts are worth it either. People rightfully complained about the goddess cubes in Skyward Sword, but these are pretty much the same thing. Why aren't people complaining about these? At least in Skyward Sword, you got really useful rewards like medals and new pouches. I guess they are there to add to the whole sea scavenger vibe of the exploration of this game. I do like that the Triforce hunt forces you to explore, but at the same time, there really isn't anything too unique with the quest itself. The biggest disappointment to me is the ghost ship. On the outside, it looks super cool. It looks like a spooky and fun mini dungeon, but when you get inside, it's just the reskin of the sub, where you fight some Poes and some other undead enemies. Lame. It's such a missed opportunity. At least the quest has you do the Savage Labyrinth though. This is a half mandatory, half optional mini dungeon where you go through floor after floor of enemies and it gets harder and harder as you go down. It's one of the few moments in the game that I'd say is pretty challenging. It's still not very hard, but the enemies don't drop anything here, so there's no hearts from that, and all you get is a break every 10 floors. Easily one of the most fun parts of the game, but also makes a great transition into talking about the combat. Wind Waker's combat is pretty similar to its predecessors. I'm a bit mixed on it though. On one hand, it feels smooth. Link feels especially nimble in this game, and I really like the item-focused combat in this game. Sure, in Ocarina of Time you could use items to stun enemies, but it felt really clunky and unintuitive, whereas in Wind Waker, it's much easier to use items in combat, and enemies are staggered for longer. Like I said before though, I have mixed feelings on the combat. This game decided to add one of the most annoying things to the game, the ability to knock enemies over. In older games, enemies would always stay up regardless of how strong your attack was. On one hand, this is a great addition. You attack an enemy from behind and they are stunned, giving you the upper hand. Or it would give you the upper hand if you could actually attack the enemy while they're down. Instead, you have to wait for their sorry ass to get back up again, and it's annoying every time. At least in the next game, they fixed it by letting you do a finisher. They didn't have to even do that though. At the very least, let me hit them while they're down instead of waiting nicely for them to get back up. The last change they made to the combat was the addition of counters. Basically, you wait for the A button to pop up and press it, and then watch Link do a sick move. It's nice. Honestly, that's all I really have to say on the combat. It's a little annoying sometimes, but most of the time, it's just smoother than the N64 games. So, final thoughts. In the past, I soured on this game, but after replaying it and giving it another chance, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It was a fun adventure with a very cozy, feel-good vibe to it. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, and I still think there are better games in the series, so it doesn't make the top 5 for me, but I think number 6 is a good spot for it. I think it's a great game, especially if you're new to the series, since it's easy and the puzzles aren't too complex. Anyways, that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, consider subscribing. And hey, since you made it to the end, why not let me know what you think of Wind Waker in the comments below? I'm always curious to see what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.